Mike Owens with Inside Fighting here, joined today by Michael Chiesa, who returns to action UFC 310, facing Max Griffin. Mike, always a pleasure, my man. How are things at you today?
Things are good, man. Things are good. Training camp's winding down. Just kind of combing through the game plan with a fine-tooth comb, and yeah, I'm very excited to compete on my birthday, nonetheless. So it should be a good time.
36?
37, 37
37.
years young.
37 years
Yeah,
young. How are your emotions ahead of your return, and especially after making your return on your birthday?
I'm excited, man. I'm excited, and I love the opponent. Most people wouldn't love the opponent given the fact Max is so damn tough, extremely durable. He's just, you're in for 15 minutes of hell with the guy. But I think he's an incredible human being. I think he's a total stud. Him and I have always gotten along in passing. We've actually trained together in the past. Years ago, me, him, and Fluffy got a session in at 10th Planet in Las Vegas and kind of formed a little bit of a friendship then. And it's always fun to lay it on the line with guys you consider to be your friends and cordial, I would say coworkers, I guess. But I'm excited, man. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun night.
At this stage of your career, would you prefer a cordial build-up, or do you still like when there's a little bit of needle between you and your opponent?
I'm kind of used to both. I mean, it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's just a fight.
Hmm.
It's just competition. So whether you like the guy or you don't like the guy, you still got to go out there and get the job done in the same way. Um, just because I like a guy doesn't mean I'm going to lay off the gas any more than I would against
Hmm.
somebody that I don't like. So it doesn't really change anything for me. I've kind of, as long as I've been in the sport and as long as I've been doing this, I've kind of been there, done that, seen it all. So whether we're nice to each other or we're not, whether we like each other or we don't, it doesn't change what I'm going to do when I get inside the octagon, and that's do anything I got to do to win.
But we talked about this after your Tony Ferguson, when you talked about how you felt like the crowd and kind of the media and the fans were against you, and they wanted Tony to win so much. I imagine it
Yeah.
must be nice going into a fight where you're at least it's going to be a 50-50 split in the team overall, if not
Yeah.
a slightly
Yeah.
pro Michael Chiesa crowd.
I think it's really going to depend on who has more friends and family show up because we're early on the fight card. So
Mm.
T-Mobile is not going to be close to capacity. Um, but it doesn't I've fighting guys like Kevin Holland, fighting guys like Tony Ferguson, very fan friendly fighters. It doesn't really bug me if I don't have the crowd on my side. Um, and I'm also excited. I never really get to compete early on the card. I've usually been like late in the prelims on the main card, and that's great. I love the exposure, but it's going to be nice to like wake up, shake out, go to the arena, fight, and be done instead of
Mm.
having to spend the whole day. Like when I fought Tony, I think that we left for the arena at like 10:30 at night.
Mm.
So it's just a lot of time during the day. You're going with the ebbs and flows of fight day. Mentally you're all over the place. You're high, you're low, you're left, you're right. Things are just going all sorts of different directions, and it's a feeling I'm accustomed to. Um, but this is something new for me, and
Mm.
that's what makes it fun. It's like there's a new little wrinkle to this fight, and that's like getting to fight early on the card, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited to start things off. I'm going to lead it off for Chase Hooper, and he's going to close the show for Washington on December 7th.
When you look at Max as an upcoming opponent, how do you assess his skill set in relation to yours?
Well, obviously he's got a lot of power in that right hand, a lot of power in general, just a powerful guy, very athletic. You could tell he's strong, but when it comes to the technical skills, I think that Max is just like grossly underrated. If you go back and break down his film, he there's a lot of fights where he will go approach them differently than what you're not normally used to. Like we saw in the Condit fight, very kick heavy attack, really attack the legs. And then you look at like the Zaleem fight, wrestling heavy, a lot of grappling, a lot of top pressure, really closing the space, and just having like a smothering type of style. Tim Means saw a lot of counter striking. So with him, obviously, I think plan A for him is he's going to go hunt for the knockout, but I'm also very aware of the fact that he can change his game plan and pivot at any point in the fight, and that's a testament to how skilled he is. I think Max Griffin's a very skilled fighter. He's very well rounded, and the reason why he's one of the most tough, durable fighters at 170 pounds.
Talking about his durability as well, I think of 10 losses, he's only been stopped once. That was by Colby Covington. I think that went into the third round, if memory serves. When you look at his skill set and you look at the type of fights that he's had and the way that he's lost previously, do you almost adjust your game plan expecting to go 15 minutes?
Well, I'm always prepared to go 15 minutes. I mean, I've been in there. I've gone the distance with guys like Sean Brady. I've gone the distance with
Mm,
guys like Trinaldo. Incredible fighters. So it's
mm,
one of those things where, like, as a fighter, you want to get the finish, but you have to be prepared for, not necessarily for things to not go your way, but you just have to be prepared to go 15 minutes. And that's just the way we train. Um, I've been doing this a long time, and for how long I've been doing, I've really honed in on how I should train, how I should approach these sessions, what I have to do to best prepare myself to go out and get the job done in less than 15 minutes, but also have to go out there if I got to play blood and guts and go the full 15 minutes. And so be it conditioning wise and from a technical standpoint, I'll be very prepared to do that if I have to. So I'm excited for it.
At this stage of your career, are these the type of fights, these kind of veteran versus veteran matchups, are these the ones that interest you most, or do you have more interest on kind of the young bucks who have some hype at 117 and trying to shut their hype down, if you will?
I don't really have a preference. I mean,
Of course.
I've spent so much of my career fighting in the rankings. So when you're in the rankings, you're just kind of hyper focused on like 10 to 15 guys. And you can just kind of have an idea of like what's next for you after you fight. Um, Not having that number next to my name is kind of liberating in a sense, where like I'm not shackled to like just 15 guys.
Mm,
You just don't know who they're going to call with. So
yeah.
it doesn't matter if it's a grizzled vet, it doesn't matter if it's an up and comer. It's just exciting to be back in that position that I was in when I first got in the UFC, where you just don't know who you're going to fight. You just
Mm.
don't know what to expect. So they called with Max Griffin. I got excited about the matchup. I'm sure he did as well. So it's going to be a fun fight.
Putting your Chiesa commentary hat on for just a second, has there been anybody? There we go. Has there been anybody in the welterweight division who's been super impressive to you in this calendar year?
Well, I got it. Obviously Shavkat, he's fighting on the same night as me, him and Ian Garry, two undefeated prospects, locking horns in a number one contender fight. I think that's an incredible matchup. Um, but the one guy I want to give some praise to is I want to give some praise to Joaquin Buckley. I think Joaquin Buckley is the dark horse in terms of contenders at 170 pounds, and he's getting his rightful opportunity to fight a guy like Colby Covington. I'm really excited for that fight. I like those guys from that gym, Charles Johnson and Joaquin Buckley. I love their coaches. They have a good, solid team. I'm always kind of pulling for those guys, but man, Buckley showed that he's in the right weight class, and I think that the big X factor for him is he's very hungry. I mean, it's just he emits hunger just with his. He has this aura about him where you can tell by the way he trains, the way he works, his confidence. I feel like Buckley's a complete package. I think he's going to have a good night on December 14th, and people are going to be talking about him fighting for a title. And obviously, a former opponent of mine, Sean Brady, he looked absolutely incredible against Gilbert Burns. I mean, the pace that he was able to sustain for 25 minutes showed that he's a big problem for anybody at 170 pounds. So welterweight is a very exciting division that's just blossoming and popping at the seams with prospects and talent and just well-rounded fighters. So it's fun being in the weight class as a competitor, and it's also fun watching this weight class on the outside as a fan and as an analyst as well.
Has the way that this whole situation with the Tampa main event and obviously the co-main event for this card has the way it's shaken out surprised you in terms of it eventually being Ian Garry who stepped up to face Shavkat and it eventually being Colby Covington who stepped up to face Joaquin Buckley to save the UFC Tampa main event?
I was a bit surprised, because I thought that it was going to be Buckley and Ian Garry. I know that they kind of announced that, and the UFC can pivot on a dime when they have to. So I think that this is an incredible fight, and I think it's the right time. A lot of times when you got two undefeated prospects in the same weight class, you kind of want to wait until they get to the top for them to face each other, and that's essentially what they did with this fight. And they build it as a number one contender fight, as they should. Um, so this is an incredible fight. I originally thought it would be when Bilal withdrew. I thought it would be Usman and Shavkat, Ian Garry versus Colby. Things can change on a whim when you're in the UFC. So I think that things shook out even better. I love this Ian Garry fight with Shavkat Rakhmonov, and I love this Buckley fight with Colby Covington. It's a big month for welterweights.
Looking at Shavkat and Ian, who do you give the edge to in that fight, and what would you say are the keys to maybe one key to victory for each man?
Well, I think the big key for victory is one key component to this fight is these guys have trained together. There's a little bit of footage out there of them sparring. They've gotten a feel for each other. So I think the X factor is going to be who can bring a different wrinkle to their game plan, to give them something that they haven't seen. Like, so who's going to be the one to kind of pivot? Maybe it's going to be Ian trying to mix in some takedowns. Maybe it's going to be Shavkat, going deviate him from his boxing heavy approach, maybe going to the kicks, maybe attacking the body with the knees. That remains to be seen. But I think that that's going to be the X factor, is who can throw a different wrinkle into their game plan to throw the other person off. And I think that that's going to be necessary for both of these guys because they're familiar with each other. They've trained together. They've got a feel for each other. So, but it's hard for me to lean away from Shavkat as the guy that gets the win. I think that Shavkat, I believe that he's going to win. I think it's going to be a good fight. I think Ian Garry could be the guy that could take him the distance for the first time. So we'll see.
Talking about different new wrinkles to the game. I'm gonna have a nice segue here, Mike. Are we any closer to your Dana White Contender Series broadcast debut for season 9? Any updates?
We'll see. No updates, man. Just focus on the task at hand with the fight right now.
Mm.
So that it just, I think in due time I'm going to get it. I put it out there that 2025 I believe is going to be my year. So it's just really between now and when season 9 starts on Contender Series, it's all about taking advantage of the reps that I can get. Big shout out to Battlefield Fight League. They've been giving me a lot of great opportunities to commentate fights for them. I got a little taste of that with Road to UFC. So I feel comfortable in that space. And I think that I'm going to perform my best when I get the chance to do that at the highest level. So in the meantime, I'm just going to take advantage of every chance I get to get a quality rep. And yeah, we'll see what happens. But it's going to happen. I just feel it in my bones.
I love it. I love it. If you had to give me the name of somebody whose fight you've commentated on this year who's impressed you the most, who springs to mind?
Man, Wang Kong, who fights this weekend. I got to call you. She's a buzzsaw, man. She's really good. I got to call her fight in Road to UFC. She is incredible. I think that she could have a belt wrapped around her waist in due time. So she impresses me. Another person that impresses me as well. There's a kid named Radley De Silva, who fights for Battlefield Fight League. He beat one of my teammates, Drake Randall, who I think is incredible, and he did it in devastating fashion. So I think that in due time he'll be in the UFC. There's another young buck named Adam Posner, who fights for Battlefield as well. He just won Samurai Fight League or Samurai MMA. I don't know the full name of that promotion, but he just won a big fight over in Montreal. I think that was last week. So he's looking good. A lot of talent in Canada, man. A lot of talent in Canada. It's crazy. It's a hotbed for mixed martial arts. So I think a lot of these Canadian fighters in the next year, they're going to get their chance to fight on Contender Series in the UFC, and it'll be cool for my guy Jay Golshani, who's he runs Battlefield Fight League. So I know that he takes a lot of pride in when his fighters make that jump to the UFC. So I think that between those three people, they're three very, very talented fighters.
Talking about big fights, what did you make at the UFC 309 main event between Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic? Did anything surprise you in that matchup?
No, Jon is just a calculated cerebral killer. Like the guy just it's the film study, dude. I mean, the fight IQ is off the charts. The film study, the way he's able to break people down is it's incredible. He trained that kick for months, and that was a devastating shot. And I think the report came out that I think he fractured some ribs and lacerated the spleen of Stipe Miocic. So that just shows he's got a lot of power. And Jon just showed how great he is. And I hope that he sticks around and fights again. There's only 2 fights really out there for him, and that's Alex Pereira and Tom Aspinall. And count me in for either of those fights. I would love to see it. So hopefully the Jon can sit down with the brass and break bread and figure something out, and we see him in the octagon again in 2025.
Has his behavior around the Tom Aspinall fight surprised you at all?
It's so hard to read.
Mm.
That's a great question because Jon is such a cerebral fighter. there's a big part of me that thinks that he's just saying these things to get under Tom Aspinall's skin,
Mm,
to ruffle the feathers of the fans.
mm,
Look, let's just be honest. For anybody to say that Jon Jones is afraid of Tom Aspinall, you're fooling yourself. I don't think there's not a man that walks God's green earth on 2 feet that gives that guy even the slightest
mm.
sensation of fear. He's I think that he's riling up the fans. I think that
Yeah.
that's what he's doing. I think he's riling up Tom. I think he's riling up the fans. But I do think that he means what he says when he's not going to take that fight unless it's a significant payday. And I think that he's earned that. It would be not only the biggest heavyweight fight in UFC history, I believe it would be the biggest fight in UFC history, without a doubt, if he fights Tom Aspinall. If he fights Alex, I think it falls in that same category as a very, very big fight. But him and Tom would be like, it would be incredible. I mean, the hype around that fight, the event that they would do, who knows where it would be. I can't imagine that John would go to England to fight Tom Aspinall, but if I was a betting man, I would say that'd be a fight that they would do at T-Mobile in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I agree. Well, turning the conversation back to yourself and my final question. You can be as brief or as detailed as you like with this one, but give me a walkthrough of the perfect fight day on December 7th as you envisage it. So when you wake up in the morning to when you go to sleep at night, talk me through a perfect day.
I'm gonna have a really smooth weight cut. My weight is way ahead of schedule right now. I'm gonna get up on my birthday, probably answer some text messages and some phone calls from some people wishing me happy birthday. I'm gonna go eat breakfast. I'm gonna shake out. I'm gonna go to the arena. I'm gonna walk out there feeling good. And whether I get the job done quick or I go 15 minutes, I just see myself getting my hand raised come hell or high water. So I'm excited to go out there, fight early, and get to the birthday celebrations. And happy birthday to me.
I love it. Well, Mike, always a pleasure catching up. Thank you for your time. Have a great and safe rest of camp, and I hope you give yourself the best birthday on at UFC 310.
Thank you, my brother. Enjoy the show.